Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ilia State University. My name is Ilyas and I'm head of the Commissions. I would like to extend a particular warm welcome to our guests, State Minister of Georgia on European and Euro-Atlantic integration, Mr. Alexei, Deputy Foreign Minister, Professor Tamar, His Excellency Philip Dimitrov, Ambassador of the European Union to Georgia, Her Excellency Federica Fabi, Ambassador of Italy to Georgia, His Excellency Dimitriu Bardea, Ambassador of Romania to Georgia, His Excellency Trit Turk, Ambassador of Estonia to Georgia, His Excellency Jonas Vaslauskas, Ambassador of Lithuania to Georgia, and other representatives of different embassies of countries in Georgia. Welcome to my colleagues from Ilia State University. And excuse me? Oh, I'm so mistaken, I'm sorry. Welcome to Bulgarian Ambassador to Georgia, at Ilia State University. And welcome students and faculty members of our university. I feel very much honored to be here and to welcome all of you. Today's event is dedicated to the signature of association agreement between Georgia and the European Union. And we all know that the Georgian-European relations went through different stages since our country regained its independence in 1991. And we all hope that the association agreement will not be the final destination or the final stage in our relations on our way towards European family. The discussion today is organized by Centre of Europe at Ilia State University. The Centre unites professors and scholars working from different fields, academic fields. And the aim of the Centre is, first of all, to raise awareness about European-Georgian relations among young generation, promote European study programs among our students here at ISU, as well as conduct multidisciplinary research on Euro-Georgian relations and study phenomena of Europeanization in the neighborhood of the European Union. The Centre of Europe relies on experience and expertise of diverse and various centers existing at Ilia State University, Italian Center, Dutch Center, Center for English Language and Culture, Austrian Library, to mention a few of them, as well as long tradition of teaching and studying European culture and European languages at Ilia State University. Our university has bachelor's and master programs in European studies. Was to mention that the programs have been developed in close cooperation with Limerick University in Ireland. Unfortunately, we do not have embassy of Ireland here, but the university is very supportive. Through various programs and academic exchange networks, we have been able to establish close contacts with leading European universities. And in 2013, more than 100 students graduated from bachelor's and master's programs in European studies at Ilia State. I'm pretty sure that we will continue our work, and the Centre of Europe will further intensify its work devoted to study, better understand, and promote Georgia's way to Europe. Once more, welcome to Ilia State University. I hope we will have a interesting discussion today. And now I would like to invite Mr. Philip Dimitrov, Ambassador of the European Union, for his welcome speech.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here. And at the same time, I will feel ashamed to start repeating to you all the well-known things because it's such a learned audience. And there is no need to concentrate on what everybody knows. So I will expect more of this dialogue to go in the form of questions and interest which you show in the matter. In fact, it is a reflection of what is supposed to be the general Georgian attitude to the matter, because we have data that about 80% of the Georgian people are in favor of the pro-Western orientation of Georgia. And naturally, as a very good expression of this, of its ambitions to seek European integration. Second, I would like to point out just three things which I consider important, because I come across them almost every other day. And I think that it will be difficult to discuss the details of the relationship between Europe and Georgia without clarifying these basic issues. The first of them is something which came to my mind as a result of conversations with a number of journalists. Now that the signature of the association agreement with Georgia and the European Union is already history, in fact. I was surprised to get some questions about what, after all, will Europe take away from us now with this association agreement. Psychologically speaking, such kind of questions show that A, somebody thinks that Georgia is getting a lot from this association agreement, and B, that the body thinks that you can't get these things for free. So evidently there should be something terrible that Georgia has to pay for such a game. In fact, this fits very much into the Soviet textbook's logic of the way in which especially bigger things are exploiting smaller things, and naturally Europe is bigger than Georgia. So it is in the line of thought which, well, you're probably very young to have been taught too much into it, but the people of my generation know it very well and smell it from a distance. And I want to clarify this issue. In fact, it will be reasonable to try to grasp the fact that Europe will not be taking anything away from Georgia. Don't feel frustrated by this. Don't feel offended. It is not that Europe does not value Georgia. It is not that we don't find anything worth grabbing and taking away. It is only that the concept of Europe about its place in the world, you may like it or not, you may consider it efficient or not, but it's a concept that we gain from stability. You have heard we always talk about win-win games. There are people who evidently think in a different way. I'm sure that there are people who think in terms of win-lose games, but we don't. We're talking all the time about coming to yes. I'm sure there are people who are not so infatuated with this, but we're trying to find a compromise which can make everybody reasonably happy. You have heard that one of the European standards being not to play zero-sum games. And in the same time, you know that, of course, there are other entities which sometimes play exactly the zero-sum game. But this is the philosophy of Europe. As I said, you may like it or not, you may consider it efficient or not, this is your business. But such a philosophy, as a logical consequence, has the idea that we need stability around. Rightly or not, we think that we're so good that if things are calm and stable, then we are the best. You may agree or not, but this is the philosophy of Europe. This is why Europe proposes to the countries next door association agreements, deep and comprehensive free trade agreements, things which, in our view, bring stability, can increase the prosperity of this country, and this way make us feel safer and happier. As I said, it is your estimation whether this is a reasonable philosophy or not, but this is our philosophy. So for this reason, Europe is ready to give to small Georgia the access to the huge European market and get, as a compensation for this, the access of huge Europe into the small Georgian market. It is not a matter of some kind of condescending feeling or something like this. It is because we believe we gain from stability and from prosperity around us. This is the first thing. So, if you can kind of overcome this frustrating feeling of what the hell they want to grab from us, it will be a great step forward. The second thing is that, after all, it is Georgia that wants to come closer to Europe, not Europe that wants to come closer to Georgia. No offense to this. I mean, this is the word we gave. It is a club. We want to get into a club. If in this club they all go with ties for dinner, you put the tie for dinner. That's it. If you don't want to put the tie, you don't go to the club. And it means that it is very inefficient to try to prove to Europe that it is on the wrong track on a number of issues and has to change this. Probably Europe is on the wrong track on some issues. Probably the closer you come to Europe, the better you will be able to influence the development of all that we do, and probably then this contribution will be extremely helpful. But for the time being, it doesn't help very much. I'll say it doesn't help at all to wave a finger to Europe on any occasion. There are some people who have the right to do it. I mean, those people who think that people of different religion and different ethnicity should not cherish the same rights. They have the right to wave a finger at Europe. I don't buy them, but they have the right. Those people who believe that gay people are criminals or something like this, they have the right to wave a finger. I don't buy it, but they have the right. Those people who believe that parties should decide whether an investigation is done in the proper way, or think that those who disagree on political grounds with them do not have the right to exist, they can wave a finger. Again, as I said, I don't buy it, but this is a matter of rights. However, these are the non-European attitudes. Those who really want to be part of Europe because they believe that they share the same values, have no reason to wave their finger. As I said, they may be dissatisfied with some things, and I guess if you ask any of the ambassadors here, they will tell you that he or his country has this kind of issue in Europe which is not exactly the way it should be. And this is okay. This is what we will develop. But the idea that you just wave it aside or raise the finger against it is not productive in the context of trying to become part of this club. If you don't, it's another matter. And the third thing which I wanted to mention is that for this reason, I mean, it's not fun when you have a signal coming from Europe and somebody starts telling you that, okay, everything is fine. Look, it may be not quite fine, and it will be very good if you can have a look at this issue or another. No, it's fine, we know what we do. Don't bother, it's okay. This comes about. And the third thing is connected with the fact that this movement, this getting into the club, is something which presupposes certain element of change. You probably know that I'm one of the great fans of the Georgian culture. And I definitely believe that Georgia has given proofs of fantastic capacity through the centuries and through the last years of being capable of not only creating huge problems, which is another story, but also being able to address them and solve them in a way which is almost unique in terms of its efficiency and good results. And still, having said all this, there are a number of things which Georgia needs to address and change. Immediately, I imagine this bunch of people who, in fact, in their hearts are kind of not very much on the European track, who would say, aha, they want us to change, they don't want us the way we are, aha. They want us to give up our traditions, our values, our God knows what. Bad guys from Europe, they want to change it, that's it. Of course, this is not true. But the truth is that a certain element of change is absolutely inevitable. Because, in fact, living together, we inevitably change. I mean, if you ask me how much I have changed since I have married my wife, I can tell you volumes. Starting from the things which I like to eat, and ending with the small gestures which have been extremely unpleasant to me 20 years ago, and now I love them so much that if I don't see them for a while, I miss them. That's it. So, this is the inevitability of living together. But if you don't have this in your mind, if you don't take it into account, then you will be an easy prey into the hands of the people who, in fact, don't want to go the chosen way you have chosen, and will try to seduce you out of it by making this big fuss about they want to change us, they want us to give up some of our traditions, etc. I'm very kind of cautious here because I'm representative of the EU. When I was in my country and I was talking on my behalf, I was talking a little bit harsher to that. I was telling them, just look, if you want to keep all, let's call all your traditional habits, etc., give it up. Some habits have to be changed. And this is, again, inevitable. If you have the positive attitude to this, and if you take it as part of the natural and desirable approach to becoming part of a family, then everything will go successfully. And in fact, this is what I very much desire for Georgia.
Thank you very much. How should we proceed? We have quite informal discussion today. I would just suggest just to go on with this presentation and then gather some questions and discussion. Okay, then it's my pleasure to give the floor to Deputy Foreign Minister Professor and to mention at the same time that Professor is Professor at Ilyas State University, one of the leading faculty members in our European Studies program.
Thank you, Daniel. Excellencies, dear State Minister, dear students, I'm particularly happy that we are gathering today here just a few days after signing of association agreement. I'm honored and privileged to be here, and I'm particularly happy of my two functions here, as David mentioned, as a Deputy Foreign Minister in charge of European integration, and as a professor of Ilyas State University that I extremely value for its spirit, reforms, and achievements. I'm very glad to see familiar faces in the auditorium. These are my students that are already not just learning about European integration and European studies, but they're already contributing to all the developments Georgia's European way while working with the private sector or the public or civil society organizations. So I want to mention just two issues. Once again, highlight the importance of signing of association agreement. And the second, also highlight the importance of Ilia University European Center, because I see this event as a formal inauguration of our center. First of all, association agreement. I will definitely repeat once again that it was a historic moment for Georgia and historic moment for the European Union. Association agreement opens new opportunities and paves the way towards progressive development of EU-Georgia relations. This agreement is a value itself and provides a special tool for fulfilling European idea of Georgia and its citizens, and lays the foundation for European integration of our country. Also, the signing, this step clearly demonstrated true aspiration of our people to live in the European state with strong institutions. In the European state, we have shared values and principles of democracy, rule of law, human rights and fundamental freedoms, fair competition and solidarity are part of daily life. This is very important. By signing association agreement, Georgia commits itself to the gradual establishment of European political, economic, social and legislative standards, which has to bring development, prosperity and stability of our citizens. But this is a process, and Georgia, by signing association agreement, by committing itself to the political association and economic integration with the EU, is already part of that process. As Ambassador said, signature is also part of the history. What is next? We have very concrete plans, and ratification of agreement as it is required by the procedure will be the next step, which is already scheduled for July 18. And Georgia will be the first country among partner countries, Moldova and Ukraine, that signed the association agreement together, that will make, based on the provisional application, agreement in force starting hopefully from the first days of September. Which means that it's not a declaration anymore, it's a legally binding commitment of the country. So what is the next step? As I'm sure State Minister in charge of European and Euro-Atlantic integration, the structure which is the number one in coordinating activities of the whole government will give you more details. But I want to mention already that government has a 3-year plan, association agenda, which clarifies all particular tasks and commitments from both sides for coming 3 years. And this is a task that requires not only commitment of the government, but all layers of the society, businesses, civil society, and in this process, I believe the role of young generation as an agent for change, the change that's also Ambassador highlighted, which is so important in this process of coming closer to the EU, fulfilling the European dream of Georgia, is extremely important. So you have to be driving force in this process. But to fulfill this function, knowledge, awareness, contribution is extremely important. And here I come to my next point, which is the European Center of Ilia State University that was established a couple of years ago, but today we have a better opportunity to expand its activity, to further develop a master's program on European integration, to open PhD research opportunity, to develop this center as a full-fledged think tank that will provide policy advice to governments, to businesses, and other layers of the society. So I very much expect that our European friends and partners will support the activities of the center. And I also hope that today's event will open a regular series of discussion and debates on Georgia's European agenda. And I want to believe that you will be the most active contributors of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before giving the floor to the State Minister, I just wanted to remind the audience that before signing the ceremony in Brussels, Mr. President, we visited our university and we had a very fruitful discussion on different issues, and I hope the same will happen today. Hopefully.
Thank you, Federica. Thank you and good afternoon, Excellencies, dear friends. Let me also start with a congratulations to all, to my fellow countrymen, to the distinguished audience here, and to everyone in Georgia for the signing of the historic agreement with the European Union on the association agreement together with the DCFTA. I would also like to congratulate distinguished ambassadors of the European Union member states and the head of the EU delegation here in the country, who have done, all of them have done a lot to make this day closer. So I must underline from the very beginning that this is in mutual interest, the further development of the cooperation between Georgia and the European Union and the integration of Georgia in the European Union. Our end goal, as it was made very clear, is the membership of the European Union. It's not to come tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or in the nearest years, but it is the end goal, and we are ready to go this way with all necessary work, 24 hours a day work, with the support and assistance of the European Union. We have outlined not once that Georgia's foreign policy priorities, key foreign policy priorities, are the membership of EU and NATO. And this is based not only on the platform of any of the political forces, but on the nationwide choice. This is the historic choice of the Georgian people, supported by more than 85% of Georgians today, integration in European Union and in NATO. The government of Georgia is committed to further accelerating reforms across the EU integration agenda. As Professor Verchashvili has mentioned, we have a lot to do. A lot of work needs to be done. And our office is ready to coordinate the work of the government and the work of the communication between the government and the parliament and other institutions. Of course, the involvement of the civil society is of the utmost importance. But what we are doing, and we have already done, is the adoption of the governmental decree on the measures for effective implementation of the association agreement and its DCFTA component in February 2014, which defines functions of the respective ministries in the association agenda implementation process. Improvement of the capacities of our office, decisions to create in each line ministry the special unit responsible on EU integration issues. In the EU Law Department that the Ministry of Justice has already been established. Intensive training of the civil servants on EU integration related issues in the training center of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. We pay also special attention to the broadening of dialogue with civil society. In cooperation with civil society, especially the Georgian National Platform, we adopted and are implementing the EU integration communication and information strategy of the government of Georgia for the period of 2014-2017. And I must say the diplomatic corps is very much involved in the realization of the actual plan of this strategy. I would like to emphasize that the priorities of European integration are in full conformity with the reforms planned by the Georgian government and its vision of the country's social and economic development reflected in the respective 2020 governmental strategies. We already have impressive results in many areas, including the development of democracy and rule of law. The presidential elections of 2013 and the first round of recent local elections were widely assessed as the best in Georgia's post-independence history. These elections once again proved the European choice of Georgian population by voting for politicians with strong pro-Western agenda. I'm glad to know that in Georgia today, political pluralism, freedom of the media and speech, human property and minority rights, and many other values of democracy enjoy the same favorable treatment as in Western countries. Georgia also continues the implementation of the deep and comprehensive free trade area-related reform in order to foster the entry into force of the DCFTA. An important package of legislative changes aiming at the approximation of the national labor legislation with international standards has been adopted. Special attention is paid to the effective food safety and anti-monopoly policies as well as the approximation of the technical regulations. We understand that what has been achieved in Georgia at this moment is just the beginning of a difficult transformation process. In fact, the association agreement is the Georgia's modernization plan. It is the plan for Georgia's Europeanization. We are responsible as a government. We are committed to fulfill our commitments, but we need your support, civil societies and youth support in the implementation of these reforms. We are open. Wide-scale and costly reforms require the development of governmental institutions and large investments in the private sector. The SME sector, small and medium enterprises sector, is especially vulnerable to the reforms. To meet these challenges, the government established special funds and programs that will provide necessary expertise and greater access to finances. We are grateful that the European Union is paying the attention to this area, to this field in providing financial assistance. We believe that the association agreement and the DCFTA will increase our competitiveness despite the fact that we're a small country, we have a small market, but we will have the access to the huge 500 million market with our huge potential to sell their good Georgian wine, good Georgian suluguni, etc., etc. Access to the largest market in the world and a predictable, transparent and stable economic environment in the country will significantly increase the attractiveness of Georgia for foreign investments. Political association and economic integration is a lengthy process and brings benefits in the medium and long-term perspective. Therefore, in parallel, we need to focus on the short-term deliverables in order to meet public expectations and draw benefits for our citizens. In this context, we expect significant progress in terms of visa-free travel for Georgian citizens to the EU. Our expectations are based on the successful implementation of the Visa Liberalization Action Plan. Progress on mobility is one of the most crucial issues in the European integration process for ordinary citizens of Georgia, which brings direct tangible benefits. Political and economic benefits of European integration, including the visa-free regime, is important for peaceful solution of the conflict in Georgia and restoration of territorial integrity of the country, as Georgia will become more attractive for the residents of the occupied territories. I can't miss here the opportunity to mention the soft power possibilities in our country. There can be another offer. There can be an offer of visa-free travel into the different direction. So we have to take this in mind. We all have to take this in mind. The Ossetians, Abkhazians can have the Georgian passports and travel to the European Union, Schengen zone, visa-free travel. And this is the offer, this is the advantage of speeding up the process of getting visa liberalization action plan realized. Conflicts in the Eastern Partnership region cause serious danger to security and stability in Europe. That was proved recently by the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. Therefore, abolishing the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the neighboring countries should be properly responded. Russia should be stopped by peaceful but effective actions of the international democratic community. Georgia has strong will to be not only consumer of the international stability and security, but also to contribute and donate to it. I proudly can say that Georgia nowadays may be considered as more contributor than consumer by sending the largest non-NATO force to the ISAF mission in Afghanistan. And my condolences here to our Czech friends and colleagues who have lost today 4 officers and soldiers today in Afghanistan. Georgia also participates in the EU-led operation in the Central African Republic by deploying 1 light infantry company to contribute as a reliable partner to the Union's effort to build peace and security worldwide. Furthermore, we are ready to contribute to the EU mission in Mali. We believe that Georgia's contribution to the EU mission will open a new chapter in the EU-Georgia relations, aimed at promoting CSDP goals. In parallel with joint efforts to ensure peace and stability in the region, we hope that the EU will support us in ongoing reforms by using all available resources, sharing expertise, advice, and best practices. We welcome the increased involvement of the EIB and EBRD in implementation of concrete infrastructural projects that supporting implementation of the Eastern Partnership sectoral priorities. I cannot miss this opportunity and have to mention that in Tbilisi we will have very important Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, which is a very good and very important sign of the civil society's deeper involvement in the processes of integration in the European Union. To finalize my speech, probably again the long one, I would like to underline just recently the President of the European Union Council, Mr. Van Rompuy, as well as Mr. Barroso, the President of the European Commission, have underlined that the association agreement is not the end goal of Georgia-EU cooperation. We have the end goal, and this is the full membership of Georgia in the European Union. I think it is a two-way movement. I hope very much that when the day comes, when it will become again the popular issue of enlargement in the European Union, we will be there, we will be ready, and we will accept the invitation to the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa. And the next presenter is Ambassador of Italy to Georgia, Federica Fabi. You will know that from July on, Italy will take over the presidency in the European Union, so it's interesting to hear what are the plans of Italians in the Union.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the university for inviting me, and to the
Deputy Minister for inviting me and including me in this very interesting panel. Being Italian, I normally feel the right to be passionate in my speech because everybody knows really more or less in the country have this quality. But today I'm afraid I'll be very boring and institutional, especially compared to my colleague, the European ambassador. In fact, I would like to talk about the priority of the Italian presidency of the Council of the European Union. Why? First of all, it's the first time I do it in Georgia, that Italy does in Georgia. It's the first time you may have a copy of this. That is also the first time presentation of the logo of the Italian presidency. So why I decided to talk about this? But because in fact it includes a part from the Eastern neighborhood policy and priority of Italy in this that is concern or that the interest is an interest of Georgia and not only Georgia, but also because I think that it can give you a picture of the club today. The club mentioned by Ambassador Dimitri. Our priorities, of course, relates to the main issue, many challenges that we are facing in Europe. So being interested, Georgia, in developing the cooperation with Europe, I think that can be interesting. You will forgive me if I give you some background information in general on the presidents of the council, tasks, functions, and yes, I'll be very brief, but I would like to say because it helped me to talk about the single priorities. Well, first of all, the tasks of the relating presidencies. You can see in this brochures are to plan meetings in the Council of the European Union to ensure the cooperation among member states in order to reach common results, to represent the Council with the other EU institutions. But after the Lisbon Treaty that entered into force in 2009, we are part of a trio presidency. Before we had the Troika, and now we have the trio presidency, under which three successive presidencies work together and develop an 8-month political program. These ensure a high level of consistency and coordination in the work of the European Union. Italy is a part of trio presidency with Latvia and Luxembourg, from July to the 1st of July 2014 to 13th December 2014. So our priorities should be included in a larger policy priorities, those of the trio presidencies. You can see again from this brochure that which are the priorities of the trio presidency. Economic growth and job creation, because this is the main problem that we have, that we share in all the countries in the European Union. Europe 2020 is a strategy for a sustainable and inclusive growth in Europe. To complete the single market, including the digital single market, to progress in the European Monetary Union, because it's not completed yet, on climate and energy policy, and implementing the home affairs policy that was established with the Stockholm program and that is finished in 2014, to increase and develop the trade and commercial strategic partnership with the United States, Canada, and Japan, the EU neighborhood policy that I mentioned, and the enlargement policy, the post-2015 development agenda, the global role of the European Union in foreign affairs that includes a number of targets. What, again, as a background information, the Council of the European Union meets in 10 different configurations, depending on the subject being discussed. The rotating presidency is chairing the general affairs, economic and financial affairs, including budget, justice and home affairs, including civil protection, employment, social policy, health and consumers affairs, competitiveness, transport and telecommunication, energy, agriculture, environment, education, youth, culture, and sport. We don't share, the presidency does not share European Council, Foreign Affairs Council, and the Eurogroup. So, going to the priority of the Italian presidency, we can sum them up in three groups. A job-friendly Europe and economic growth, a EU as an area of democracy, rights and freedom, and a large and a global role in the world of the European Union. Talking about job-friendly Europe and economic growth, with more than 26 million unemployed in Europe, our presidency action must focus on creating more jobs, facilitating competitiveness, and fostering growth of the European economy. During the presidency, we will concentrate our efforts to tackling youth unemployment. We have 40% of young people in Italy unemployed. Through an effective implementation of youth guarantee, that is strategy, while also investing on education, training and mobility of the labor force. We are eager to launch the midterm review of Europe 2020 strategy for a smart, sustainable and inclusive European economy in order to readdress our action, taking stock of the contribution from various council formations. The Italian presidency will further facilitate the work of deepening the European Monetary Union within the targets of the priority of the presidency. We will seize the opportunity of the new legislative cycles. You know that we are now, we have just a new elected parliament, to prompt a new strategic cycle centered on the competition of the single market. Internet and digital communication technologies are also powerful tools to modernize our economy and working environment, particularly by creating high-quality jobs. The European Council will continue to work on the policy framework for climate and energy in the period from 2020 and 2030, in order to ensure that post-2020 EU is on track to meet the climate objectives, especially within the United Nations climate framework. For democracy, rights and freedom, Italy will promote the Council, in the Council a reflection on institutional development of the Union within the existing treaties. In our aim to minimize the gap between the gap European citizens perceive between them and the European institution in order to facilitate the development of better and more democratic Europe. We will work for a stronger EU role in the Mediterranean to prevent the recent tragedies in the Mediterranean Sea. When it comes to migration, Italy is on the front line, and I don't have to explain to you why, especially during this week. We still have in mind the image of the tragedy occurred and still happening in Lampedusa and in the south of Mediterranean. We are strongly committed to create a larger consensus on the need to increase intra-European Union cooperation and solidarities in managing migration and asylum seeker and asylum policy. The particular pressure on national asylum system of some member states require a step forward to promote genuine solidarity at the European level. The Presidency will focus on achieving progress in the negotiations in the Council on the proposal for a regulation on the establishment of European Public Prosecutor's Office. Human rights, fundamental freedoms, and rule of law will also be at the forefront of the Italian presidency. This within the European Union is something that we used to listen for Georgia, but is also a priority within the European Union, since they represent the cornerstone of the European construction and the defining element of our shared identity. The Italian presidency will therefore encourage the process of the European Union's accession to the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights. As a global actor, Italy will support the European External Action Service, that is the diplomatic service of the European Union, in the effort to strengthen the EU posture in the international stage. The enlargement policy is still a strategic priority and fundamental tool to promote peace, democracy, and security in Europe. The European Union should demonstrate credibility and sound commitment to the enlargement process in order to motivate the candidate and potential candidate countries to take the necessary steps in order to progress. Italy will encourage the regional dimension of the European neighborhood policy. The transition process in North Africa and in the Middle East entails an increasing European Union presence and effectiveness in promoting democratic principles and social development. We will keep the highest attention to the Syrian crisis and its spillovers that may interest also Georgia, by encouraging political solution, providing humanitarian assistance in Syria, and facilitating the stability of Lebanon through the support of the Lebanese armed force. We are extremely concerned by the situation in Ukraine. Italy supports the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and will promote the country's political and economic stabilization. Italy, furthermore, will back European Union efforts aimed at reforming the civilian security sector through a European mission and the energy sector. In spite of the Ukrainian crisis, Russia remains an important partner to tackle regional and global issues. Therefore, ways to relaunch the dialogue between the European Union and Russia should be explored, if the general context of reference could allow it, trying to restore a partnership approach. In this case, the policy of dialogue we would like to have with Russia is, in a way, the same policy that your country actually has undertaken. Specifically on Eastern Partnership, Eastern Neighborhood, apart what the crisis in Ukraine, we believe that the Eastern Neighborhood has also seen some remarkable progress. I want to congratulate the Georgian Authority and the Georgian people on signing the association agreement in the margin of the last month's European Council. This step constitutes an important milestone as well as a beginning, as the State Minister said. The agreement, and especially the DCFTA, will bring the cooperation between the European Union and Georgia on a new, higher level. The President's focus will be on the implementation of the association agreements, including a deep comprehensive free trade area with Georgia and Moldova. Of course, much remains to be done in the way of implementation of the agreements. In order for Georgia to reap full benefit of the agreement, Georgia must work hard to ensure swift progress on the association agenda. The European Union has already earmarked significant financial resources to help Georgia meet the requirements and standards provided for the agreement. Italy stands ready to help Georgia meet this unique challenge. On visa policy, the Italian presidency will give its utmost attention to visa policy within the framework of mobility dialogues with third countries. The President will encourage negotiations on visa facilitation aimed at balancing the Union's relations with its neighbors, both in the Mediterranean area and the Eastern Partnership. We will support substantial simplification, which does not jeopardize security, should be the final outcome, with the aim of encouraging mobility to the EU. Then, of course, as I mentioned, we will have as a priority to the prosecution of the negotiations on the transatlantic trade and investment partnership. And we are strongly committed to implementing the Council conclusion on the future prospect of macro-regional strategies that belongs to an area of Europe that goes from the Adriatic and Ionian region to the Alpine region. Italy will host a number of major events. You will find the list here. And our presidency events will take place in Rome and Milan. Milan will host in 2015 a very important exposition, the Expo 2015. We still hope that Georgia will join it, even if we are not very comfortable with the news, with its informal information, but I still hope that there is space, room for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we move to the next presenter,
Thank you very much to the organizers of this event, and thank you very much for inviting me. And it's very good to return to that auditorium. I see many familiar faces here. I try not to repeat because a lot has been said, but I eliminated half of my speech here. But I would like to echo Minister and Deputy Minister saying that the signature of the agreements was really a historic day for Europe. For Europe, I stress, not only for Georgia, because it was a step towards Europe whole and free. First of all, yes, it was an important day for your bilateral relations with Europe, but also it was a good development in Eastern Partnership policy. Agreements are the really unique instruments which have big potential, and Georgia should use that. And the way of implementing the agreement will be not easy. It will be full of different challenges, but also plenty of opportunities. Either we use it or either we miss it. So Georgia, please know that you are not left alone in this process, and we all are the one team. Really, the agreement won't bring immediate employment. The agreement won't bring higher wages or instant economic growth. But with time, it will contribute to more prosperous Georgia, and really it won't happen overnight. So what this agreement is? First, it is far more than a set of rules and regulations. I am sure that it will help to introduce reforms that will bring Georgia to resemble the member states of the European Union, economically, socially, and politically. Second, it will embed core European values of mutual respect, tolerance, and rule of law in Georgia's public life. Third, it will bring more predictability and consistency to your public life. And fourth, in due course, it will deliver a high quality of life to all Georgians. In short, this agreement is an investment in future. The best investments take time to mature, and I believe that your hard work and the work of your government will pay off in the long run. My country, Lithuania, just recently commemorated 10th anniversary of its membership in EU. And I today can firmly say that the membership drastically changed my country. And our people already for those 10 years have been enjoying most valuable principles of EU. Let's take one of them, freedom of movement. And for example, speaking to academic audience, to students, to NGOs, I only can say that about more than 20,000 of Lithuanian students during those years became participants of EU program Erasmus, which is very, very important for future generations. Secondly, the level of life in Lithuania during those 10 years raised by 1/3. Our export to EU countries grew almost 3 times. At the same time, the financial aid assistance to Lithuania from the structural funds of EU is equal to 1/4 of our annual budget. But at the same time, we see and hear forces, especially from abroad, who are trying to bring some doubts about the European way to discredit or to misinterpret European realities, or simply trying to spread false information to Georgian people. Based on the experience of my country, I can say firmly that the agreement doesn't pose any threat to Georgian culture and traditional values. On the contrary, EU's motto is united in diversity. Or let us take discrimination legislation. It is being introduced to protect people from any kind, I repeat, any kind of discrimination. And it assures that equal right will inflame or make some damage to Georgian-Russian relations. In contrary, it aims to promote regional stability and cooperations. Also, the agreement will never isolate any national minority in Georgia, because it promotes anti-discrimination and fully supports the protection of the minorities. The association agreement will never challenge the authority of Georgian Orthodox Church. I remember when Commissioner Fule was here, he met with your patriarch, and I remember how strong support for your European way was expressed by the patriarch. And I can go with more and more myths of economic origin, but please believe me that the experience of my country show absolutely positive results of our engagement with the EU. For example, it is expected that DCFTA will boost trade between Georgia and EU by 12% as regards Georgia's export to the EU and by 8% as regards Georgia's export from the EU. The DCFTA as a whole is expected to boost GDP by 4.3% annually. And there are also some immediate benefits after signing the agreement. All the tariffs will be removed from EU side, and secondly, the Georgian companies, business community will have simpler conditions to establish the activities in EU and in Georgia. My final advice to you, not only support your government, speaking to students and NGOs, not only support your government's efforts on Georgia's integration into the EU, but also actively participate in this process. Study the experience of the countries like Lithuania, be predictable and reliable partner to your friends in the EU, proceed with the needed reforms and transformations. Believe in commonly shared values, and please understand that signing of association agreement and DCFTA is not the end, but only the beginning of a long, complicated process on your road to membership. My country went that way, and we wish Georgia to be successful on this way too. Thank you very much.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Ilyas. I'm an associate professor at Ilia State University, and my interest goes toward the process of negotiating of association agreement. Would you tell me, please, what does it make to negotiate an association agreement when you are a small country negotiating with a huge entity as European Union is? Do you feel a huge power asymmetry? Does the approach of European Union is kind of take it or leave it? And do the small country have a room to maneuver during the negotiations? Thank you.
Definitely yes, we do have the room for maneuver. I can tell you that the EU negotiators will tell you that Georgian negotiators are quite good at getting what they are demanding, and I must praise here Tamar Beruchashvili, David Zalkaliani, Apuna Janelidze, and the whole team of the negotiators under the previous government, who have done a great job, and moved forward this agreement, started the negotiations, and the government, the current government team has finalized it. The difficult part was remaining. The negotiations were difficult, were not easy. We wanted to have there some stronger indications, but this is not about big and small and take or leave it. It is about the matter of the cooperation. In future, what was not reached today can be reached tomorrow. For example, everyone, there is nobody in this room and outside of this room, I believe, who does not accept that Georgia is the European country. And I was really very happy hearing from the President of the European Council, Union Council, and the European Commission saying that the association agreement is not the end goal of the Georgia-EU cooperation. Months before, it wasn't easy to get this wording exactly, but we have continued working with each other. We have continued deepening our cooperation, and I believe that step by step we will get what we are looking for, what we were negotiating for. This is the European perspective to be indicated in this or that official decision or statement, but it needs time. We have to understand that these negotiations We have been part of the even harder negotiations with Russians on the withdrawal of their military bases. You can't imagine how they're waiting, fighting to death on every simple detail of removing from the military bases. They left over only the surprises, the very unpleasant surprises like the landmines in the offices and stuff like that. This is the different case. I mean, we are entering the family of the democratic states. So this is totally different. And of course, there is a huge community and organization. But we do not accept this big, small. We have demonstrated this with Russia. I don't want to make any parallels, but we are entering the family.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Yeah, sure. But at the same time, we know how tight your schedule is.
Yes. I can take one more question. If
Okay, yeah, okay.
If
One
there
more
is
question, and I would like to hear from conversations.
one question.
I have one question, so I think that this question is more towards the representatives of European Union rather than the Georgian part. So I have to, okay. So the question is actually related to one very important and general topic, the topic that I think worries most Georgians and not only Georgians. So this is the issue of Russia. We all know that Russia and the European Union have quite different worldviews regarding the future of the post-Soviet space, regarding the future of the area that EU regards as its neighborhood. So this, in two words, these differences in conceptual understanding that could be characterized as the EU trying to build here liberal democracy and Russia trying to build here the so-called managed democracy. So my question is related to this broad issue. We frequently hear the theory about the perspectives or prospects of Georgia going close to European Union. Some of European experts, some of representatives of different European countries say that our way towards Europe lies into the normalization of relations with Russia. But I think that there is something like a closed circle here, because as far as we know that Russia has quite different interests and quite different interests towards the region, whether it could be seen as the Russia's interest to normalize relations with Georgia, to allow Georgia to normalize relations with itself. So can you have more, let's say, more efficient approach, more aggressive, let's say, an aggressive approach towards the perspectives of Russia hindering Europeanization of the region as a whole, of the post-Soviet space? Thank you.
I well know how much the vast majority of Georgians desire to hear the sacred words one day you will join the EU. You will not hear them now for sure. I have to share with you that I have had exactly the same desire, and we have been doing absolutely the same funny gestures which sometimes you do. In all the period from 1989 to, let's say, 1999 about the European Union, 2001 June for later. And we did every effort, and we never got the signal clear, and we never in fact knew whether it would happen or not. So my advice will be, of course you should push to hear the words. I mean, this is human. But this is not the essence of the whole thing. The essence of it is what we will do. As a matter of fact, the association agreement which you have signed, and everybody pointed out that it is historical. And that it is historical not only for you, but for Europe too, is to a large extent based on the fact that this is an entirely new generation of association agreement. The association agreement which my government signed back in 1992 December was 7 pages plus a few annexes which made them around probably 15. That was it. It treated trade issues. We had long debates about how much, about the quantity of cherries we can sell in the European Union. We had some problems with textile and the amounts quoted there, etc. But this was just the typical trade agreement. You do what you can do, and then you go and sell on certain, according to certain rules. What you get now is entirely different. This is practically introducing the rules of the European market in Georgia to the extent which makes Georgia part of the economic space of the European Union, part of the common European market. I don't know if you grasp what does it mean. For how many is it? 35 years. This is what Europe was. It was a common market, period. This is how we called it as a matter. And you're getting this now. I think it's a huge achievement. I mean, it's not that I'm paid to be optimistic as European ambassador. I indeed think it is a huge achievement. It is like giving you a boat of absolutely high quality and all the equipment for it, and letting you to go and fish. Plus, having had a few hours with some instructors which tell you what are the most terrible things you should not and never do if you want to fish. Which means that, well, if you go with the boat exactly where you shouldn't go, or if you don't feel like throwing the equipment, I mean, there will be no fish. But under normal circumstances, if you do the elementary things which you're supposed to do, being supplied with this kind of boat and this kind of equipment, you're doomed to have fish for lunch. It's as simple as that. Well, this is the beginning. This is actually the first question which we raised. The problem was, are we supposed to pay this boat by cutting a piece of your living flesh for these terrible Europeans which want it? The answer is no. The answer is that you have done a lot. To be frank, we have got something from Georgia. We have got a country which has proven that the things which we stand for are not so easy to be neglected. We have a country which has proven that you may have lived for almost 100 years, well, let it be 70, under the Soviet system as part of the Soviet Union, and you can be European. This is great. You have proven that you can be a country, I will not use the term failed state because somebody somewhere was very much offended by this, but you can be a country which is number close to one in corruption, number close to one in inefficiency, number close to one in criminality, and become the best candidate for European integration. This is a lot. This gives us something, because it is a proof that what we live for is actually valid. So we can say thank you for this. We're not going to cut a piece of your living flesh for 2 reasons. The first of them is that, in fact, it will not help anybody. I mean, we won't eat raw flesh first. And second, you will be much better off if you can manage with your boat instead of shouting from the open sea for help all the time. So we don't need to put you in this difficult position by cutting off your living flesh. That's the payment. The payment is what you do. And this is why I have always been saying that Georgia is the most promising of Eastern European countries, because Georgia started its reforms on its own. It might not have been exactly the way that we imagined it. We might have had this terrible time of discussing with your people, and you asked Minister Petrishvili, you should have asked me, because these guys can make the life of a European bureaucrat absolutely miserable. And they achieved a lot of what they wanted. But the very fact that it was their initiative, the very fact that they started these things, the very fact that it was Georgia which on its own initiative started to become a modern Western country with all the values, because there is some, I should have used a bad word, but I'll swallow it, but there is some talk about, Georgia was modernizing, but it was not democratizing. What does modernize without democratize mean? Making like a modern pharaoh or what? Building pyramids with computers? I mean, that's crazy. And this is a matter which unfortunately can carry the European Union too. But this is something which, let us not call it a payment, but which makes you to deserve this. So you work for your boat and for your equipment. But now, please be kind enough, go fish. And don't waste your time into putting all the effort and all the expectation into whether these three magic words will be said or not. And the words may come someday.
I am not going to give any promises, because I cannot do that, but being representative of not all European Union, but smaller country, I can express my optimism and demonstrate my optimism, because my country once was in a very complicated situation, and for us the future membership in NATO or EU looked very, very, I would say, far away. Yes, a lot of depends on, it's not only on Georgia, which your success depends. It depends also on how united Europe and USA will stand. Ukraine events somehow helped us to be more united in Europe now. And it also really depends how the West world will speak in one voice, and how they will stand for their values and for the values of those who chosen to accept those European values. For Georgia, naturally, you need strategic patience. You shouldn't change your course. You should stay a reliable partner to EU and United States, and you will be a success. Being a Lithuanian, I'll give you some liberty to say that I'm optimistic, and I believe that someday you will reach your goal and you will become members of both organizations you are integrating yourself to. Thank you very much. One more. Tym Evrokავშირskim aერთი ნაბიჯი უკან. Forward to European Union, no step back.
Yes, I just would like to two sentences, actually more to answer to the second question, that the first one that was for the State Minister. But just to say that actually I'm not sure that we can say what is the strategy of Russia in Europe or in the former Soviet Union area. I don't see we are able in Europe or in other parts of the world to understand what really Russia, if even Russia as a strategy, or if just acting tactically sometimes. we don't know actually, so I wouldn't base the foreign policy of Georgia and of the European Union on what Russia may or not do. Second thing that I would like to say is, of course, dialogue is extremely important for Georgia, for European Union, but for Georgia in particular, being the conflict there. So really, this is something that you should continue to do, in my opinion. But as you see from the signature of the association agreement, you don't need any approval from Russia to increase the cooperation with the European Union. And if you want to make Russia informed and to have dialogue about this, you are able to decide. Actually, you started, and I think that is a perfect path.
So, if I may, to complement the answer of State Minister regarding negotiation process, and I can guess why Tato is asking these questions, because he's the most experienced professional and the teacher of the negotiation skills, not only in this university, but I would say in Georgia. So, in few words, that was powerful learning exercise for Georgia, the negotiation process. That was not easy, but that mobilized and developed national expertise, which is so important now for the implementation process. So it was part of asymmetry, of course, was present there, and that was very right question. As Ambassador said recently, Georgia wants to join the club, so you cannot exclude asymmetry, particularly when you have to negotiate regulatory convergence and legal harmonization and alignment to the European norms and legal regulations. So you have to take it. There is no decision that you have to leave it, otherwise there is no sense of the European integration process in general for Georgia. So you have to take it. That was a decision because we entered to these negotiations. But the positive side of that was that there was an opportunity to negotiate timing. It was extremely important. Plus, opportunity to get additional support and the joint ownership of all this process of transformation. So asymmetry was there, but we tried to make positive outcome of that. The second, we had very intensive dialogue on the first part of the negotiation, on the first part of agreement, which is political component, because as it was said, agreement has political component and economic, DCFTA, the comprehensive free trade component, plus sectoral issues. So it's extremely comprehensive and covers all sectors in general. So political component was extremely important, and our priority was to include all high priority issues for Georgia, not today, but for the future as well. And one of them, it was closer engagement of the European Union in peaceful conflict resolution. Actually, from the very beginning, there was no separate chapter on peaceful conflict resolution that we finally accommodated at the separate chapter of this agreement. So, and EU and the whole negotiating team from External Action Service was very cooperative and very committed to include all the priorities from security and political dialogue as well. Of course, we wanted to see there Georgia as a European state, and we had almost war of words on that. And finally, unfortunately, we ended up with Georgia as an Eastern European state. But for me and for many others, there's no particular meaning of that because anyway, Georgia is a European state and it is mentioned there. So this is on negotiation, and you can imagine very hard work of 4 years that produce at the end more than 1,300 full pages, and a commitment to align to more than 300 rules and regulations of the European Union. So the positive side of that is that there will be no immediate request to change the most painful ideas and reforms. So the changes will come in a gradual way. Secondly, Georgia is not alone in this process, and we will have strong support of the different nature from the EU and also other partners, member states, and even USA is planning its future assistance envelope, considering priorities of the Georgians' commitment and association agreement, because it's a genuine, very concrete plan, very comprehensive, that covers the wide range of reforms and truly serves the modernization of the country. So on the second question, I fully agree with Ambassador of Lithuania that for Georgia it's extremely important EU and the West speaking one voice. This is very obvious today that Eastern Partnership in general, being the countries of the Eastern Partnership, the neighbors of our neighbors of the EU as well as the neighbors of Russia. And there is a competition in this neighborhood. And as we see, this is a competition for values. And EU speaking one voice and West in general speaking one voice and safeguarding these values are extremely important for Georgia because our strength is, as it was mentioned, consistency, reformation, development, and strengthening our democracy. And we can say that governments coming and going, presidents coming and going, but there is one priority, which is the civilizational choice of Georgia, European and Euro-Atlantic future for our country.
Thank you. With your permission, I will have to ask the audience for the last questions. We can take 2-3 questions no more. Please.
Thank you for coming, visiting the university. My name is Niko Kalacic. I teach finance in this university. So my question is about economic impact, which this agreement might have on Georgia. So it's right. I mean, Georgia was considering Europe before signing this agreement, and even now, kind of as a wealthy friend who will invite us to eat that fish in an expensive restaurant rather than ask us to catch it ourselves. But I'm very grateful that now this perception should change definitely. So we should catch this fish ourselves. Ambassador mentioned some numbers that it will impact import and export 8%, 10%, and also will increase our GDP by 4.5 as far as I remember. The crucial part of this is the foreign direct investments and direct investments in Europe, and also maybe from the third countries which will kind of try to benefit from the free trade with Europe. So do we have any kind of estimation or expectation how this might influence the foreign direct investments, which are so crucial for the future economic development of Georgia? Thank you.
Okay. My name is Alexander, and thank you firstly for these kind of presentations and the meeting, which is, I suppose, very important for the Georgian society, spreading the information about the association agreement and European values. My question goes to the sector of education. Actually, I have two questions, but they are related. Firstly, I would like to ask the ambassadors whether they see certain problems in the higher education of Georgia, and what are these problems in which the European Union could collaborate and help to improve, not only financially, but support the technical issues and aspects. Secondly, the question of integration of the minorities in Georgia, and as Professor Vershashvili mentioned, the aspect of the conflict resolution was included in the agreement between the European Union and Georgia. So I suppose myself that the exchange of the youth and the researchers or in the field of education would be a very important issue in order to integrate or return home the Abkhazian and Ossetian youth. So, what you see the possibility to invite and make it more accessible the projects for both the Ossetians and Abkhazians. I myself visited recently and had meetings in Moldova State University where I saw a completely different image, and I do not really compare the conflicts. Of course, they are different, but it makes somehow possible to invite the students from Tiraspol and write the common projects where it becomes possible to actually bring those students to Chisinau and think about the common issues together. Do you see the possibility of such development in Georgia? Thank you very much.
My question is, in your view, what is going to be the impact of the association agreement or the bilateral exchange programs between EU and our universities in Georgia, particularly in terms of research? Because in the framework of Erasmus Mundus and Campus, we are already successfully cooperating, and this is really very good. But we would like to cooperate even more. And we hope that the association agreement will open up new possibilities for this. Thank you very much.
And only in a not technical way, especially to the last question, I'm not able to give you an answer. We might just more to the negotiators on this, but of course, for education, minorities, and they are absolutely part of our values, and I believe that an effort in this sector must be done in the country. As in Europe, I mentioned the priority of my country, but in Georgia, education is in general an issue, and not only the higher education that is closer to your needs, but even the lower education. And I believe that the government that understands, and actually I've heard the Prime Minister mention many times that it's a priority for his government, should invest very, very much. And with the help of these programs of the European Union and the financing that is already exists already, and maybe will increase with a more for more approach, and with association agreement implementation, specific financial. I think that a lot of work must be done. For specific exchanges of students of the two regions, if you mention a cooperation between Sukhumi with Iblisi, I cannot answer, of course. But for exchanges with European countries, I think that is absolutely possible. I can mention the experience of Italy, and there would be, I know that there would be an initiative also with France, but we, with the support of the Georgian government, the previous one and the current one, we sent a group of Abkhazian students. So the first time they were very young, the second time they were higher education students, to Italy, together with a group of Georgians, same level, same studies, same age. And the experience was very successful. It was more a bureaucratic problem than a political issue, because everybody agreed on the need and on the possibility. We should use this means more in the future, and I hope that can be done in many other countries of Europe.
So I'm sure that Professor Dr. will answer your questions, especially the ones concerned with education best. But again, let us clarify a few things. Point number one, there's no way that all your university will be moved to Milan or to Edinburgh. Period. So you will study here, you will have exchanges, and the exchanges, as a matter of fact, are increasing. It is the association agreement that has some contribution to this, but it's not only the association agreement, it's the concept of the Erasmus Plus, which is kind of a more open approach. And you will have all these things. You will compete for them. Some of you will be happy to get it, some of you will be unhappy that they haven't got it, and they will try to find other ways to achieve something maybe even better. But this is about reality. Second, the way in which the education in your own university, as in any other university, will improve, is not to be done by the government, period. The government can facilitate it, it can help it, it can direct certain money into this field, but it is not the government that does this. And you should be absolutely scared if you hear that the government will improve your education, because it means that the academic autonomy will be blown to the window, and you shouldn't like this idea. So it is your professors, and of course you, who will be challenged by your fastidiousness, who will be tempted by the programs like Temple's Erasmus Plus, etc., who will be probably stimulated somehow by the government too, that will solve this problem. It is not the job of the government per se. And for this reason, a diplomat should not be able, as we are not able to answer this question thoroughly, because we're dealing with government. And this is not about government. And the last question connected with the FDI. I'm a little bit skeptical always when people start talking in figures. I mean, we have such figures, and my colleague gave you some of them. Probably I have here a few others. And you should not take them for granted. I mean, these are rough estimations. What we know for sure is that the countries which got into the economic situation in which we are getting, becoming part of the European market, have shown, all of them, considerable increase, conspicuous increase, I would say, of their GDP. They have managed to address, and it is as a matter of fact paradoxical, but some of the newcomers managed to address the issue of unemployment much better than some of the old countries. And raise of the income of people, which was not that much of a surprise, because as you know, the income of the newcomers has been much lower than the other ones, and now they're coming closer and closer. Still, they're not equal. So, you should expect this. I do agree that a good part of it will be driven by foreign direct investment. To be frank, it is not only the foreign direct investment,
it is not only the investment that pushes this, but the main bulk of it indeed will be due to the foreign direct investment. Well, what is the part of the government? What is the part of the people? What is the part of the general atmosphere? I am trying to avoid the issue about Russia, because Russia turns out to be a complicated entity towards which we send the signals we consider to be the right ones and hope that they should be well understood, and sometimes they're not. So it is true that it is always problematic when you have a neighbor who is difficult to predict, to put it very mild. And this is why we all the time advise you, and will continue to advise you, to do your best to normalize your relations with Russia. On the other hand, we have to be deaf and blind in order not to understand that this is a game for two. So, in any event, the more stability you have, the more attractive you will be for foreign direct investment. And what can be a problem for your neighbor can be compensated by the fact that you are becoming part of this big European market, because it is tempting to be able to produce something in Georgia and sell it in France. And however you look at it, it is a good idea. Having said all this, here there will be a lot to be done in terms of climate and the way in which businesses go in your country. This is sometimes very contradictory. I told you a few minutes ago that we have paid a pretty serious price to get the vote we were talking about. And you very well know that many people are very angry that this price was paid. There are things which can make investors happier, and there will be people who will probably object to this. I'm not talking only about the fantasies, like the fantasy about the right to buy land in the country. Because, I mean, the land that somebody buys in the country is something which is very difficult to put into a suitcase and take away. However, you see that even there is a very serious prejudice. Not to mention about things connected with administrative measures that facilitate these businesses. To give you an example, it is a temporary measure, of course, because this kind of markets get saturated, but Georgia was for a long period of time a leading country in the trade with used cars in the region. I mean, you will not make an economy out of this. But for a period of time, especially in time when people had to put their feet back on the ground, this was extremely helpful. This was possible 90% because of the right policy of the government, 10% because of the industriousness of Georgians, without which you cannot ever do it. But if you don't have the fiscal approach, which makes this something that brings some profit, it will never work. So, when it comes to foreign direct investment, the role of the government and the climate which the government creates is huge, even though it is not direct. You cannot come and bring the breakfast into the bed of the investor. But some feeling that the country is safe. Point number one. I mean, if the country is not safe, if they are stealing your car and breaking into your apartment every day, I mean, it may have the best possibilities for production and selling out, but don't go there. If the country is corrupt, if they ask you for bribes for everything, you don't go there.
So achievements of this kind are crucial if the country is having a steady pace of achievement to go there. Well, if it is kind of new, if everything has been wrong until yesterday, and on the students everything is fine, you will wait for another day to see how things go, etc., etc. So these are important things for the foreign direct investment, which no one can forecast in strict figures nowadays. But again, the idea that you can produce in Georgia and sell in France is an idea which can tempt a lot of investors. I would say a lot more investors than up to now, because it is a different kind of game. You come here and you can go into the huge European market. So I think the effect of the association agreement was very close.
So very briefly, to complement what Philip just said, of course the access of the most lucrative market in the world, European Union market, is the very powerful incentive for FDIs, as well as predictability and the European norms and standards that will be gradually introduced to Georgia. So therefore, economy of scale and the results of these deep reforms that country will go gradually and which are already started will bring us to the situation when the label made in Georgia will be very attractive. And the question was regarding the interest of third countries, and I can give you a concrete example. Just a month ago, we had the first investment international conference supported by European Union, exactly with the main purpose to highlight, explain, demonstrate the deep and comprehensive free trade component of the agreement, and that mobilized potential investors not only from nearby regions, but from Japan, from China, with their very concrete interest, what they can do in the future in Georgia in order to use this prospect of access to the European market. So, of course, that will not happen overnight. That would require very serious reforms from Georgia, but this is a potential that government is highly committed to exploit. Regarding the educational program, I fully agree with Philip that universities have to be very active, more probably involved in different opportunities, but at the same time there is task of the government that should be provided for more interaction, and that was done during the negotiation process, and we have separate chapter which is dedicated to the education and the culture that has special commitment from the government of Georgia to harmonize policies in order to ensure more interaction, in order to ensure more mobility. And on the top of that, Georgia recently signed special agreement on participation of European programs that includes Erasmus+, that includes Horizon, youth programs, Leonardo, and all others. These are new opportunities that was not available for Georgia past years. Now we have this new framework which provides more interaction for students. Of course, the challenging part of this is that there will be no more quotas for Georgia. So we are entering to the open competition, which provides opportunities, but we have to be competitive. So we have to develop ourselves individually, collectively, to be competitive and seize these new opportunities.
Well, thank you very much for that, and now I'd like to invite you outside to raise a glass of wine to our center and to Georgian European relations. Thank you.